All right, so if you're just joining us and you skipped over the initial setup video, I don't blame you. You probably know Xcode fairly well. The only changes I've made so far to the clean copy of the kit is I've changed the scene size to 1920 by 1080 on the cover phone, and on the cover, which is intended for the iPad, is going to be now 2040 by 5036. That just makes copying images back and forth between these two a little bit simpler. It also means that we can use 1x images in the kit, and they're going to scale down nice and stay crispy for those devices, because we essentially have a scene that's double the size it needs to be. And also too, if you're going to copy these images for the tvOS version of the kit, they're going to copy back and forth. You don't need to do any scaling. And then also too, we've got a camera in here called the camera in both the cover phone and just the regular cover page. You can see that the camera is always the same size as the scene itself. All right, so let's get those first two images in here that we're going to use. And I've got my assets folder open inside of my clean copy, or I should say inside of my demo tutorial project. I've got another folder called working assets, and I'm just going to grab both of these guys, and you can see they don't have any sort of name extension like @2x. I'm just going to drop them right into here. They're both going to go into the 1x slots, which again is what I want, because we're using images that are bigger than they need to be. Well, kind of. They're just bigger, let's put it that way. And that's all a 2x image is anyway. It's just bigger. All right, so now what I'm going to do is take out a new color sprite. And if you're not in this little section, it's just this little tab, the show object library. We're going to spend most of our time dragging things out of the show object library. This includes actions that we're going to use to move the images and things like that. And then most of your time spent on this top panel is going to be done in the attribute inspector. But we're going to move over here to the custom class inspector pretty shortly, but otherwise it's mostly just these two little sub-tabs. All right, so we've dragged this out. That's a color sprite, and first thing we should do, let's go ahead and make it look nice and pretty. We're going to put in the cover. Actually, I'm going to use cover 2 for my real cover page, and I'm going to scale this up just a tad bit. There we go. So make sure it gets in there perfectly. I'm going to put it a little bit further over this way, and then that way we're going to kind of slide it over as the book opens up. And let's call this cover image. And I'm going to go over here to the custom class inspector. Now anything that you want to interact with that is a sprite in the kit, you're going to name element. All right, now that's a big thing to remember. All right, even I forget sometimes, but you'll notice over here in our property list under cover, we've got elements, okay, and what we're going to do is put in there a cover image in just a little bit and kind of define really just one property, which is going to be that when we touch it, we're going to go and progress on to the next page. So just remember elements, all right, and inside of here are going to be the names of any of the color sprites that you put in the scene that have a custom class of element. That's a singular element. All right, so back over here, we've got our image in there. If I were to publish this on the iPad, not the iPhone, you would see this image. But if we want to do the same thing for the iPhone, very simple to just go and copy out what we've already got. So you can copy it, paste it on in. There we go, paste it in. Now for the iPhone, you might want to kind of change this because obviously some of the top is getting cut off a little bit. It's just up to you how much you want to make the iPhone different from the iPad. So there you go. We've kind of adjusted it just a little bit. And let's go back over here to our cover.sks file. I'm going to kind of click into the back over here, just the background, and I'm going to change the color of the background. And you can, I'm sorry if you missed that, it's just clicking right here. You can grab the little eyedropper. I'm just going to make the background of this just that same nice green color. So if I did, kind of want to scale this up like that, at least the background color would kind of match a little bit. But I'm mostly just doing that so you guys can see how you can set the color of the background in there. And let's go ahead and animate this guy. So you'll see this option right over here, animate just click that little box to make that go in and out. And if you ever want to filter down, if you have a lot of images and you ever want to kind of filter what you want to apply an action to, just type in there, and you're going to see that it's just going to kind of isolate things based on those search terms. And also too, you can select images by going over to here, and here's our scene. And you can just kind of begin typing. If I put in here camera, it's going to show me the camera cover. And then you can just kind of grab these guys like so. All right, so let's fold this down, and again, filter. If you want to move it, here's a quick way to find only the actions that are related to moving. So you can just type in move over here, and then pull this out. You've got two equally good options. The move action is going to move it relative to where it's currently at, and then the move to action, you would put in an exact XY location to move the image to. So in this case, I think it's a little bit easier to just use just a move action. So what we're going to do is drag this in, and you can kind of toggle the duration of it. Let's make it maybe 2 seconds. And then the offset is going to be how much it's going to move on the X and Y axis. So let's put in here 100. And as soon as you do that, just go ahead and push the animate button, and you can see that's definitely actually not what I want. I want negative 100. I want to slide her a little bit more that way. So you can see, there we go. It gives you a nice little preview. And you can set the timing function to ease out, and that's going to ease this out. So it's kind of slows down just a little bit at the end. It's a much nicer effect. And you can put in all sorts of other actions if you wanted to. There's not really too many I can think of that I would like to put in here for this one, but you could scale, you could resize it, which is kind of a non-uniform scale. You could rotate it, you could fade it in and out, you could even hide it. So there's plenty of ways to kind of add animation to the book without resorting to the property list, but you can also animate things via the property list too, but that's a little bit much to talk about for right now. So now that we've got the cover image in there, let's put in here some labels. And again, this is something that you can just drag out of here, so we just put that in. Kind of a small label initially. We're going to change the size, but let's also change the Z position. Right now it's got a Z position of 0, which is the same as the cover image. And Xcode, even though it might show you that the label is at a higher or it's above this image right now, when it publishes, it kind of ends up changing the Z order a little bit if things are on the same level, and so it might disappear and you'll go, wait, what happened? So let's go ahead and just set it clearly at a Z position higher than our cover image, which again is at 0. So always a good idea to kind of label these things other than the default. So let's just call this line 1, just implying this is going to be our the first line of our text, and I'm going to make the text say space is great, and then I'm going to go ahead and change the font size. So let's go up to like 96, maybe 144 for this. So it's nice and big. Make it some bold text. There we go. And boom. So once you've got that over there, let's go ahead and just copy it out for a second line. And we'll make this kind of a tongue-in-cheek book. And we'll put like ... until maybe it isn't. And just to kind of vary the text, let's put in here, let's make this thin. I'll make the size a little bit smaller. Okay. And yet again, let's animate these guys. So this is kind of generally where I want to be at. What I'm going to do is bump this over to here, put this over, I'm going to move it off. And sometimes it's a little bit slow to move things that way. So I'm just going to kind of slide the position out. And again, let's type in move over here. So I'm going to use a move action. And because these are just kind of tucked outside of the camera right now, what I could do is I could just move them once this initial animation is done. No one's going to see them, and then slide into place. And because we're kind of being funny about the title, let's delay line 2 a little bit. Maybe I'll overlap this one coming in with the girl image sliding to a stop. So with this one, we're going to do probably about negative 400, so it drops down. Going to ease it out. Let's test it. There we go. That seems about right. And even if I didn't get it exactly right, what I could do is I could just move this up a little bit. So it's still going to move down negative 400, but because it started at a different position, it's now just about perfect. And then for this, let's type in here 600. Again, I'm going to set the easing to ease out. And we'll look at this one more time. Okay, obviously that was not enough. Let's try 1200. And again, that could be a case where I could probably put in way more X value than I need and then just adjust it over on that side. So it seems like I could use a little bit more, 1500. All right, I feel like we got it though. And now we could just simply copy these into the phone version. Again though, it might need a little adjustment. Let's change the color, be something like this, and so I'll move these down a little bit. Oh, there we go. Okay, not too far off. Let's say this one, and you know, before you start moving these around again, be sure you toggle off. So go back to it saying animate. That'll put them back at their initial position. So that one could probably stand to go up a little bit. Same with this guy, and maybe move a little bit over this way. But we came pretty close there. So there we go. Space is great, and or until maybe it isn't. Okay, both of them could probably slide back down a little bit. All right, but we'll nitpick it all later. So we've got our initial cover page. What's the next thing we want to do? Obviously, we want to go to some sort of menu page after this. So let's just duplicate our cover. So we're going to go over here, duplicate. Let's call it menu, and click save. All right, and I tend to kind of unclick these and then go back and click them again just to make sure I'm definitely editing the one that I want to. And let's delete out these labels. Let's change the image to cover one now. I'm going to scale it back up a little bit. And there we go. All right. And for the move action on this, let's set the X to 0 and maybe the Y just to something like positive 50. So something like that happens, and of course I'll move that back down now a little bit. And we'll put some of our menu elements around that. But really what I want to do is just test that we can advance from our cover to our menu. So now we got to start using our property list. Let's go over here to our cover page, and we don't need to use any events. Events are kind of anything that we want to fire initially to happen. An event can be almost anything you want, but we do want to work with elements. And just as a little reminder, we do have inside of here our cover image. Remember, it's that elements custom class. So now we need to use this exact name. Go back over here to our property list. Let's create a new dictionary inside of here. And this is going to be called cover image. And then kind of toggle that down so we can add properties inside of here. We're going to say touch up event. This is going to be a dictionary. Unfold that. And what we're going to do is just type in here open page. So these are going to be all the events that we want to happen when you touch down and then release your finger. You could also put in here just touch event, and this would occur as soon as the person touches down. Sometimes I like touch up event a little bit more though, so it's when they release their finger. And then open page, all we're going to do is put in here now the name of the next page that we want to open, which is of course our menu scene, but we do need to define properties for that, or at least just the initial page. So I'm going to paste this in here, put in here menu, or I just copy and pasted that. And once you do that, just kind of clear out you know, all that stuff. And this should now work. Of course, I'm going to give it a little bit of a test, but let's just review it. So we've got cover image. Inside of here is touch up event, open page, menu, and there's nothing says you can't combine a touch-up event with a touch event, so you could put in here just touch event, and you could have something happen, when you initially touch down. Obviously, you don't want that to be that you open the page, but you could play a sound. You could call any number of the events described in the documentation, which, let me go ahead and just show you those real fast. So over here in your documentation, if you definitely look into just this general intro page talking about events. There it is. Oh, you know what? Actually, event basics. And that's going to kind of give you a general rundown of things. But then within here, all right, event properties, these are all the different events, and there's many inside of each one of these articles that you can run, after you trigger an event. So any one of your touch-up events could fire one of these things, or touchdown events. As soon as the page loads up, you can fire an event. You can listen for certain values to be set and then fire an event. So you get event listeners. You can time events. So you could have an event happen every second, every 1/60th of a second. So there's tons of different ways to call events, and again, that's it's sort of the cornerstone of the kit in terms of its interaction. There's all these different ways that you can call events. So this one is really simple. I mean, just a touch-up event essentially makes it a button, and let's go ahead and run it on the iPad. And I think I can get away with doing this in the simulators, even though I say never test in the simulator. Sometimes it's a little bit easier for me when I'm screen capturing to just show you guys. I mean, the simulator is good for testing layout and things like that, but in terms of the actual speed, do not think that the processing power of your computer using the simulator matches that of your actual device. It's nowhere near it. Okay, so I'm just loading this up on the old iPad 2, which is, I don't even know if that one actually supports iOS 9 these days, but there you go. You can see that Space is Great came in until maybe it isn't, and then if I just click down over here, it's going to transition over to that menu page. And if you want to change your transition, that's a page setting. So if you go over here to your cover, so whatever page that you're currently on, if you want to change how it transitions to another page, you've got some transition options inside of here, and I did leave these in here by default. There's not a lot of settings, as you can see, that are currently in here by default. There's lots of other page settings that you can set, but let's go over here and just look at page settings, and it'll also give you an idea of all the different things that you can put in here. You could specify the page can't be continued from, because there's options to continue from the last page read, things like that. But you might want to say, hey, I don't want that page to be one continued from. And I'm just kind of scrolling down to give you guys an idea of all the different settings you can put in here. But the ones that you care probably the most about are going to be your transition settings. And let me do a little find. There it is, transition settings. And you've got all of these different options inside of here. Get rid of that. So crossfade, doors close horizontal, doors close vertical, fade with color, reveal with direction. Probably the one that you guys want the most is not one that Sprite Kit actually gives you, which is an option to do a fake page turn effect. That just doesn't exist in Sprite Kit, but feel free to email Apple about that one. And then there's other properties like the amount of time that you want the transition to occur over. So that would be a number just defining the seconds. Some of these transitions do want you to specify a direction of up, down, left, or right. So you can see if it says in here, reveal with direction. That would be one you'd want to put in this other property for. And you can also delay the transition. So if after someone clicks down, if you want to delay the amount of time before the transition begins, you've got that option in there as well. And so you can kind of get an idea of all these other little settings inside of here. One that is not by default in here, which we might want to start to include on every page, is initial camera, and define that as the camera. And you can see that in both of my cover and cover phone files, we've got a camera named the camera. Now, if you don't define an initial camera, it's just gonna show you what you're seeing inside of the scene itself. But by putting in their initial camera, we're now using this actual camera. So if I had this, let's say, offset down to over here, actually we could do this, kind of test this for real. So I could, put that over to there, and then if I were to run this project again, you're only going to see, this little kind of fraction of the page, which obviously you don't want to do that, but it shows you how the camera works. But one neat thing about the camera is that you can treat it pretty much just like any other node and sprite kit. You can animate it, you can rotate it, you can do things like that. You can even scale it, and there's plenty of properties to work with the camera as well. You can even kind of make things parallax, relative to where the camera's at. But that's we're just at the tip of the iceberg here, and we've at least created one demo page.